Okay, so today I'm going to start building some of the equipment racks that I need for the studio. So I'm actually going to be building 5 of them. Now, 3 of them are stationary. One's going on one side of the console, one's going on the other side, and then one's going dead center in the console, but behind it. And then there's going to be 2 carts right up front that you can actually roll around, and it's going to have wheels on them. Those carts, those front 2 carts, are really going to be the things that I use obviously the most. The 3 that are kind of sitting in the back and are stationary are really things that I don't need to necessarily, constantly go and adjust things and stuff like that. So let me go ahead and show you guys exactly how I built all these equipment racks.
True Sound Studios is in your ears.
These are going to be the 2 front rack carts that are going to have wheels on them, and it's also going to house all the gear that I use pretty much the most. So these are just 2 rectangular frames that are all screwed together. I'm using 1x3-inch pine, and these will be the tops of the rack carts where I'm actually physically mounting the rack gear. As you can see here, I just built another rectangular base, and by using these 4 pieces of wood as, I guess you would call them, feet, I essentially just mounted the very top piece and the bottom together. Now the dimensions for this is 22 inches wide total, but the inner width where the gear is mounted is 17 5/8. The depth is 19 inches. The height of the front lower part is 15 inches, and the height of the very back part, the very top of the rack, is 24 inches. And now I'm just test fitting to make sure I can fit all the gear in properly and there won't be any issues before I go ahead and paint these. Okay guys, so before I go ahead and paint these rack carts up, I figured I'd kind of go over how I built them since I didn't really film the entire process. So how I did this is kind of like break this up into 2 parts. You have like this top section, which is on an angle. And then you have this bottom base, which is really just a square box. Well, I guess a rectangular box. And then I just made these feet. Okay, so it's kind of like a table that sits on this base. 1, 2, there's one in the back corner and one in this corner. And that's really all I did to make these rack carts. So I used 1x3-inch pine. You can use 1x2-inch pine too, but I just wanted to make these a little thicker to give them a little bit more, girth. These are on a 25-degree angle, and I used the, a chop saw, and I just set up to 25 degrees, and I cut these, if you could see on the side here, at 25 degrees, and then screwed these all together. And I just tried to not have any screws on the face here, even though there's going to be a ton when I put this gear in. But you can see a lot of screw holes in the front here, and this is going to get covered up some way. I don't know if I'm going to put trim on here or whatever, but what this allows you to do is, fit all this rack gear up top. And then I actually really didn't even plan for this, but I also got some rack gear down here. I'm actually going to be able to fit 3 more pieces of gear before it hits the connections of the first piece of rack gear up here. So you can see down here, the wires would come down. So, hopefully I'm going to try to squeeze in 3, definitely 2. And then I'll put maybe a 3 rack blank space, kind of like this, but just, this is only a single rack space. I'll have one that is probably this big, like a 3 rack space. So that'll work good. And if we just kind of spin this around, I'll flip this over after I take all the gear out. So if you look at it from the back here, this might make a little bit more sense, but once again, it's just a box. I had to extend these side rails, essentially make them higher up, just because the wheels needed to be mounted to something. I didn't actually want to see the wheels. You can see them back here. They're inside of the entire cart, which allowed me to, obviously you can't see the wheels then, but it kind of glides on the ground. But you can see in the back here, a whole bunch of screws. These back, I guess we'll call them the feet. This is actually a 1x2, and that's just because I couldn't have the wood go too far over because it would have interfered with this piece of rack gear. and I couldn't have it come over any further to be flush with the side, just because of the way that I designed it. Okay, so this is the bottom of the rack cart, and this piece of wood is just holding this up just so you guys can see this on a little better angle. So this is the back. These are the straight mounted wheels. So obviously these don't swivel. And this is because I don't really like the 4 swivel wheels. I feel like it just kind of like moves too irregularly, especially when, you're trying to slide it around in a studio. And then the front 2 here, these are kind of like, I guess you would call them your steering wheels. But if you can see, there's only a 1/4 inch gap from the bottom of this piece of wood to the I guess you would say the bottom of the wheel, so that it really floats almost on the ground. It almost looks like there isn't any wheels, which is, I don't know. I thought that was cool. So these racks are actually going to sit behind the mixing console, one on the left and one on the right. And these are much different. These are not going to move. Obviously this one is for patch bays, so this is going to be my entire patch bay section. So I needed a little bit more weight and for them to be a little stronger than the other ones. I built these out of 1x6 pine, which is what the sides are made up. And then the feet there, to give it some more weight, are actually 2x6s. And just a quick look at all the patch bay wiring that I'm going to have to do at some point. And then here's the other matching one. This one is obviously for all the power supplies and just some other rack gear that really doesn't need to be adjusted much at all. And once again, made out of the same stuff. This is all the 1x6 sides and the 2x6s for the legs, just to make sure that it doesn't fall over at all. Here we go. These are the 2 side racks. These go in the back of the studio on either corner. This is the amp rack for the home theater receivers. This will sit dead center in between the speakers. And then these are the 2 19-inch racks that are on wheels. So when I posted the pictures of all 5 of these racks on Instagram, a very popular question was, am I screwing the gear right into the wood frames? And yes, I am. So I have nothing against, the metal rack rails that you can mount your gear to, but that's just one more thing to buy. It's one more thing to cut. It's one more thing to fit in. And I've actually been mounting and making all my racks in the past, 15 years out of wood. And actually, much earlier on, I didn't even know these rack rails existed. So I've been screwing into wood frames my entire recording career. So it's still extremely strong. I'm using 1-inch long drywall screws, and I took some washers, spray painted them black, and that's really all I'm doing. So I'm just screwing them right in. Now, if you're going to drill into some thinner wood, if you're going to use like pine or something like that, maybe you just want to go ahead and pre-drill them before, just to make sure it doesn't split. But, it's still really strong. I mean, obviously I want these things to last. I mean, they need to be strong and durable. So, I would not risk any of my gear if I didn't think it was strong. So now that these are all painted, now I can go ahead and actually start mounting the gear. So I am going to pre-drill every single hole, just because I really want to make sure that these last and that there is no splitting of wood, since I do have to put a ton of screws in each one of these. And now I'm just going ahead and putting all these in permanently. And I am using 1-inch long drywall screws. Again, like I said, and some black washers that I spray painted. And just going ahead and stacking all this gear up. You can see this rack is pretty much a whole bunch of DBX compression, minus that one Clark Technique EQ and that frequency analyzer at the very top there. This is the other second rack. This is more for the summing side of the studio, so I got a couple sonic maximizers there. That is a delay unit, 2 Lexicon reverbs, which are fairly inexpensive, but I think sound pretty good, and I use those when I'm just tracking vocals, not necessarily to record. There's a little sub mixer there to blend all the effects, and then I have 2 Dolby units that I use as vocal stressors and a distortion unit at top. Now these racks now I'm working on are the ones that don't move. This is the patch bay one, so I put some foam underneath the feet just to make sure that it doesn't scratch up the floor at all, since I did just freshly paint these. And once again, using the same drywall screws with the same washers to go ahead and mount all this. This is the power supply rack, and definitely putting in all of the screws and all the holes for these since they are so massive. And I got the two effects units and my API summing mixer controller. And last is this rack that will go right in the center, and this is a whole bunch of home theater gear. So we're going to take a look underneath the mixing console where I put all these different pieces of rack gear. You can see that's the home theater rack gear with all the receivers in it. If we go to the left over here, this is the whole patch bay area. And then if we come back all the way over to the right, this is where the power supplies live and a couple of those effects units and that API summing mixer controller. So just to look at how these actually came out, obviously this is the rack with all the DBX stuff in here. Got 3 rack spaces up front, and if we go to the back, you can see I have this big, thick 16-channel snake that is pretty much taking care of most of the connections under here. And I'm using that metal clamp there as a pipe strap, and that's really holding that in there nice and tight. You can see I do have some other cabling. It's all just Velcro tied onto here. But you can see it, it's nice and tidy. Now, at some point soon when I know that everything is working, all the connections, and I'm satisfied with everything, I will add fabric to the back and to the sides, because I don't want to put wood on the sides of these because it will have a resonant frequency, which is not something I want to have in a studio, especially if it's sitting next to me. And then there's also a couple things like some temporary power solutions until some of my other things that I've ordered come in. But besides that, you could pretty much say that this is the final result of what these actually came out to be. And then last here, this picture just shows all the racks, fitting in with the mixing console, and also it shows all this hard work really paying off when I get to look at a picture like that. So the next video you guys are going to see is how I built the whole mixing console stand and how I modified the meter bridge and made the whole armrest and how all that stuff came together. So definitely go look for that video. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check that out. Don't forget to go ahead and follow True Sound Studios on Instagram just to stay up to date with what is going on every single day. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video. So thank you for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, click that like button and consider subscribing for more content. So not only do I make YouTube videos, but I also produce tracks and I can mix and master your music. So once again, thank you for watching this video. I'm Weezna, and True Sound Studios is in your ears.